that is unmatchable in any other kind of experience that you're going to have. And presidents think they can run the country from it. Some try. And one thing it didn't work for Mr. Carter very well as was a campaign prop during the campaign. It just didn't invoke the symbolism it was supposed to.
But it is a, you know, there's a rejuvenating process about it. A president can sit here and open the front page of the paper every day and see what a villain he is. He turns to the editorial page and Herblock is had at him. And then he goes off. Oh, look at this. Then he goes off to a foreign land, or even out into the country, and he's received with all the pomp, ceremony. It's a reminder that he's president.
That's part of the problem, Frank.
Well, maybe.
They ought to read the editorial pages and look at Herblock cartoons a bit more. Frank, one of the things that occurs to me is he's getting up...
Here at Andrews Air Force Base, the lady who has just given a very warm embrace to President Carter is Anita Schaefer. Anita Schaefer is the wife of one of the hostages. And that certainly was one of the highlights, emotional highlights of the send-off. She gave Mr. Carter a very warm embrace, obviously thanking him for the job that he has done and getting her husband out safely.
That's the lady.
There are a lot of cabinet members here lining the red carpet, a lot of former major dignitaries in Washington, but there will be no one who Mr. Carter will be more pleased to have seen and to have embraced than that lady. He is moving down the red carpet now toward Air Force One for the flight to Plains, Georgia. He is saying goodbye to his cabinet members and to his friends and senior staff members. A couple of those staff members will be traveling with him to Georgia, but by and large, most will go back to their homes here in Washington and prepare themselves to return to regular life away from the power of government. The front ramp to this historic aircraft, which has been flying presidents since John F. Kennedy. This very same aircraft, which will now take Mr. Carter back to Plains, Georgia.
All right, thank you, Tom. We're not going to miss anything because there'll still be some time before the plane actually takes off, and not much is happening back at the Capitol here as yet. The Reagan luncheon in the Statuary Hall will take place shortly after he completes signing the proclamations, or the nominations, I should say, for his cabinet officers. But our coverage of Inauguration 81 will continue after this message and a word from our local stations.
Please watch closely. This is the fastest developing color film in the world. Polaroid's new Time Zero Super Color.
Ah.
You first see the image in 10 seconds. And here comes the color.
It's coming fast.
Look at that purple come up, and the red and yellow.
And it's so sharp.
It all happens in just seconds. You'll think your Polaroid camera's brand new.
You know, you look a lot better there than you really do.
Time Zero.
Question: what energy supplies over half the homes in America? Natural gas. What energy travels through America's most efficient energy delivery system? Gas again. What energy is basic, potentially renewable, and could last for generations? Gas once more. Conclusion: America depends on natural gas. It's our most efficient energy system today and can be counted on long into the future. Gas, the future belongs to the efficient.
This is ABC in Nashville, WNGE TV2.
I'm Malvina Kynard. At 59, I started a cooking school. I love good food, and not just my own. Take Lux beans. I think they're delicious. They're made with pork, just like at home. Hand-stirred and simmered for hours. That's a real rich home-style sauce. Try Lux yourself. Beans, peas, and greens. So home-style good, folks will think you've been to my cooking school.
Well, whatever it is, she's playing it pretty close to the chest.
I heard that.
When's my promotion coming through?
You're not getting promoted, Frank.
Get ready to duck.
What is wrong with you?
I'm just getting in shape for Wednesday's PM magazine.
Andy, let's leave that to the college students. They're the ones that are doing the screaming. At Cornell University, Primal Scream is the latest craze.
In our second story, we'll travel all the way to Venice, Italy to watch some master craftsmen at work.
It's going to be a fun show, so join us for PM Magazine at 6:30 on TV2.
Good try.
You're watching WNGE TV2 Nashville.
News live coverage of Inauguration 81 continues.
All right, we're back at the Capitol now, and President Reagan has finished signing the nominations for his cabinet officers to be formally submitted to the Senate. And I believe just before we came on that, was it Sam who was able to have a word with him about the hostage situation or not? I thought I heard him say something about crossing the border. And he probably, if I'm correct, he probably meant that he didn't want to say anything until he knew for certain that the hostages were across the border. Just to recap that for you once again, we have now been able to confirm from the PARS news agency and through our own sources, primarily Peter Jennings' contacts in working out of Frankfurt today, that the planes with the hostages took off, and we understand it happened at 3 minutes. Can you believe this? 3 minutes after Ronald Reagan took the oath of office at 12:03 or so Eastern time here today. Mr. Reagan has now finished his first official act as president, signing those documents for submission to the Senate. All but 2 of his cabinet appointees have been confirmed by the Senate, and he will now move to Statuary Hall. Is he in there now? No, he's not in there yet. He's in the great rotunda of the Capitol. He will move into Statuary Hall for the luncheon. And for the first time, we're going to be allowed in there, too, that is the television cameras, for at least a portion of the luncheon. We'll get the toasts that I understand will be offered at the conclusion of the luncheon. There is a... he's a tourist, isn't he? Oh, look up there, Mr. President. It's quite a sight. It's quite a sight, and our intrepid director is going to take the challenge and take you right up there. Way to go, Mr. Forty. Oh, what a beautiful sight it is, the great rotunda. And on top of it, of course, the Statue of Freedom, or Freedom Triumphant, as the designer of the statue wanted to call her. Most people think the statue on top is an Indian. Actually, she's not. Well, he's waiting for the cue. You know, there's an elaborately prepared scenario for all their movements. Here is President Carter, former President Carter, standing on the steps of Air Force One, about to take off, and as Tom Gerald told us, heading for planes. And possibly taking off yet again today. He's getting an embrace inside there. Possibly taking off very soon, at any rate, for Germany to greet the hostages, not only as the representative of President Reagan, but as the president said to him yesterday, or as the then president-elect said to him, as a representative of the American people. I was telling you about this elaborate scenario. They have it all written out about the movements of people. They're supposed to go to this room, and then they will be escorted back to another room. And as you read the thing, it almost looks like the script for a Marx Brothers movie. You get the mental picture of people milling all around in the place. And it's really kind of funny. There are going to be some, how many guests? 87 of the select who will be invited to this luncheon. Sometimes this is held in the old Supreme Court chambers, but they've decided today to hold it in the Statuary Hall, which was the House of Representatives, the old House of Representatives. And he's talking now to Mark Hatfield and to Senator Howard Baker as he moves through Statuary Hall.
Hi.
Jim Wooten is down.
Mr. President?
We'll go to Jim. Jim? And Herb Kaplow?
Well, signed some nominations of cabinet members and signed a memorandum to Office of Management Budget, thing that I'd promised to sign, putting a freeze on hiring of public employees. And if it never gets any tougher than this, it's a breeze.
Well, Mr. President, where are the hostages going?
Problem. How have you been kept informed of this? Does it require any action on your part now?
No. Both planes are airborne.
Where do you understand they're going, Mr. President?
The flight is to take them to Algiers, and where they change to American planes to go to Wiesbaden.
And you understand it took place on your watch?
What?
You understand it took place after you were inaugurated?
Well, the first plane was airborne at 12:33.
Mr. President, have you signed the 4 executive orders that still must be signed now to consummate the agreement with Iran? We're given to understand there are still some orders that the President must sign.
I had not been told of that. I thought that everything was in order, all the papers signed, and that's...
When did you first hear that the hostages were released?
Well, we heard that all this morning. The President told me that all the papers were signed, and the objections or the hold-up at the part of the bank had been removed. They were at the airport. The planes were at the end of the runway. And that was the final word until just following the ceremonies, in which we were told that the first plane was airborne at 12:33, and then 10 minutes later we...
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, word from the President himself.
Well, the President is going into Statuary Hall now, where he'll be dining on chicken, I'm told, one of his favorite meals, and a menu prepared by Senator Hatfield. Frank?
Thank you, Jim. Now we're going to go back downtown to our ABC News Bureau and headquarters there, and Ted Koppel. Ted?
All right, Frank. Well, if anyone was waiting for official confirmation, it doesn't come any more official than that. The new President of the United States making the announcement, or at least responding to reporters' questions and saying, yes, both planes are airborne. Yes, they are headed for Algiers. Yes, from Algiers, they will be going to Wiesbaden, West Germany, where everything is in preparation to await them and to take care of them. As you saw earlier, a few moments ago, the aircraft with former Secretary of State Cyrus Vance and a team of about 30 advance people has by now presumably already left Andrews Air Force Base on its way to Wiesbaden, West Germany. They will, of course, meet there. And what has been going on throughout all of this, because there had been no really official announcement, there could not be from the Carter administration, there had not been until President Reagan made it just a couple of minutes ago, of the fact that both aircraft are airborne. What has been going on right now is that officials at the State Department have been on the phones to families of the hostages and have been telling them that the aircraft are airborne. What we'd like to do now is to go to one of those families, the family of Air Force Captain Paul Needham. They are in Omaha, Nebraska, and with them is our correspondent, Tom Schell. Tom?
But Ted, the Needhams have been waiting for the last 48 hours very, very nervously here, not wanting to get keyed up, and we now have the information that we got it officially here 15 minutes ago, and of course we've heard President Reagan say it, and this is Mrs. Needham's birthday, and she could not have asked for anything more. She's been asking for this for 444 days. Mrs. Needham, how do you feel?
Wonderful.
Only wonderful?
Oh, very wonderful. Okay.
The call came from the State Department, and you have been smiling with us around here for the last 3 days. Right, I never saw anybody's face beam as it did when that State Department called.
There's a reason now, see. There's a reason. Yeah.
Do you now really believe it? You said a while ago.
I think I do. I think it's beginning to sink in. I do. Now I want to see him.
What do you expect to say to him when he calls you?
Oh, heaven, I don't know. But I'll say it, whatever it is.
Mr. Needham, what did the State Department say to you?
They said that they had taken off from Iran and that they would call us back when they were out of Iranian airspace and under our control.
Ted, I think that's about it from here in Omaha. The Needhams are waiting. They did get their telephone call, and I think the next one they're waiting for may come in 5 or 6 hours from Algiers.
Thank you very much, Tom Schell. Let me just bring you up to date very quickly on the time span that's likely to take place now. As you heard, the planes left roughly about 12:30 Eastern Time, that is our time, and it takes about 5 hours to get to Algiers. So they should be arriving at about 5:30 in the afternoon there. They would probably be in Algiers for about an hour and a half, and from then on to Frankfurt, West Germany, and they would be there about 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Now let's go to Peter Jennings in Frankfurt. Peter?
Ted, I was listening to you talk about the State Department advising families to show you how fast news travels. Even here, we've learned of the families being advised. Johnny McKeel's family in Bell Spring, Texas, got a call. We heard about it here moments later. Frankfurt is already a hive of activity at Rhein-Main Air Force Base. The C-9 Nightingale Medivac aircraft have had the caps taken off their engines, and they are firing up their engines. They have been told that the flight plan is still for Algiers. We have a correspondent on the flight line, so let us go there now to the flight line at Rhein-Main Air Force Base.
Here at Rhein-Main, the C-9s are standing by. The lights are on in the cockpit. The doors are closed. They've taken the caps off the engines, and it looks like they're ready to go.
Thank you very much. Have they actually got on board? Lost contact briefly with Keith Shaw, who's on the flight line at Rhein-Main. And we also have a phone call in from Tehran as quickly as we can, but we'll go back to you in the meantime, Ted.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. I would like to point out that at the moment we do not have visual satellite communications with West Germany. Hopefully that will be coming up a little bit later in the afternoon. But we will, of course, continue to go by voice contact to Peter Jennings, who will bring us up on the very latest details there. This intertwining of stories continues as they wend their way into history together. The release of the hostages and, of course, the inauguration of the new President, Ronald Reagan. It's time to go back to that aspect of the story. Here's Frank Reynolds on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Peter. Actually, the next event up here is the ceremonial luncheon that the President will give. But the really next event, as we see, is Air Force One standing on the ramp there, or on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base, and it begins the movement. On down the runway. Tom?
Go ahead, Tom. Here at Andrews Air Force Base, Frank, former President Carter and his family aboard the plane. It is at the taxi position, getting ready to fly him back to planes. And we are standing here with Mrs. Thomas Schaefer. Her husband is a hostage, a former hostage, I guess we might say. And as Mr. Carter was boarding this aircraft for the flight to planes, Mrs. Schaefer was standing in the receiving line, and they had a most emotional and warm embrace as the former president was leaving. She was among the first to actually have a chance to talk to him since the news came that the hostages definitely had been released. We're here now with Mrs. Thomas Schaefer, whose husband, an Air Force colonel, was the senior military man among the hostages. What, madam, did you say to the president, former president, and what did he say to you in that moment at the base of the ramp?
There was a very personal conversation, but basically he told me officially that my husband was in the air, he was safe, and that he would be with him tomorrow morning, and the rest of it was very personal. I thanked him for his support.
He said he would be with your husband tomorrow morning?
Yes, yes.
And how do you feel, you personally, about the news?
I'm excited. I've been worried that something might happen again, so I'm very happy.
Those worries are gone now.
Yes, 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 yes. It's wonderful.
Thanks very much for talking with us.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, too, Mrs. Schaefer. Well, we have some word that former Vice President Mondale will go to Germany with former President Carter in order to greet the hostages, and we've just had the best information yet from Mrs. Schaefer, who talked with Mr. Carter, who said that he intends to see her husband tomorrow morning. So that confirms that he will, after going to plane, will go on to Germany. Well, here is what's happening now and what is due to happen later on. The luncheon at the Capitol, we're framing this over the Great Rotunda, the interior. Then the inaugural parade, which is supposed to last about an hour, but probably will go longer than that. And then tonight, 9 or 10 inaugural balls, depending on your count. And we understand that the Reagans will probably try to make almost all of them. So their activities for the day are by no means over. Our coverage of Inauguration 81 continues in a moment.
Running this ski lodge is a family affair. We've all got our jobs to do. And when one of us gets a cold or flu,
I have to take this up to Daddy. Okay.
the rest of us do worry.
Here, he'll like this.
But we've got our Bayer. For aches, sore throat pain, and fever, nothing we can buy beats Bayer. For us, it's rest, fluids, and Bayer aspirin, the only pain reliever our family uses.
Good morning.
Dad, look at you.
For your family's aches, pains, and fever, all you need is Bayer.
When it comes to heating your home, natural gas looks even better every year. Gas is America's most efficient energy system with new gas furnaces that are real energy savers. Gas is economical, too, the least expensive way to keep your family warm. And gas is dependable. Vast underground supplies and new sources will mean efficient gas energy far into the future. Gas, the future belongs to the efficient.
Tuesday, the fawn shows Potsy the roast.
Drive me wild.
But he can't take the competition on Happy Day. Then there's trouble in paradise when an earthquake shakes up Laverne and Shirley.
Goodness, we don't know our own strength.
Jack's reputation with the ladies forces him undercover.
What is it about me?
I don't know, but now I've got to find out.
Three's Company. Then Muriel's old boyfriend hits on Jackie.
Where'd you find this out?
And it's too close for comfort.
Tonight, starting at 8, 7 Central and Mountain on ABC.
Back here at the Capitol, and I've been joined by a very distinguished guest, and are we glad to see this young man. This is Tony Cook, and Tony is the brother of Don Cook, who is the vice consul of the American Embassy in Tehran. Tony came to the inauguration, but he came wandering up here to our ABC News booth to try to find out the latest information. Is that right, Tony?
That's right.
Well, now you know.
Yes, I do.
How old are you, son?
I'm 20.
20, and how old is your brother? He's obviously your older
25.
brother. Well, you must feel just pretty great now, don't you?
I feel terrific.
Have you talked to your folks?
Not yet, no.
Did you have that terrible feeling last night that so many of us shared, that maybe something would still go wrong at the last second?
I just didn't know.
Yeah, kind of numb, huh? What do you do, Tony? Are you in school?
No, not right now.
Well, tell me, have you had much contact or much information from your brother?
Virtually nothing at all. The Christmas message is the only thing we've gotten since the rescue mission.
Since the rescue mission, you've not had any mail?
Nothing.
Before that, did you have any?
Yes, directly before we got a Red Cross telegram.
But since then, you've had no direct communication. Now, you did see your brother, though, in the Christmas
Yes, we did.
film. Yeah. How did he, what kind of an impression did you get from seeing him? Did he look up or down, or were you worried about him?
He, no more than usual, less than usual.
Really? Did he say anything? I can't recall now.
What he said was that he wished us all a Merry Christmas and that he didn't really have anything else to say.
How long had he been in Tehran, do you know?
Well, let's see, he had been in for about 4 or 5 months.
4 or 5 months. Could you tell whether he'd lost weight or whether there was any change in his appearance?
He seemed to have lost a little weight, and since Easter he's all shaved up real nice and has got his hair cut.
Well, Tony, he's on a plane right now.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And we're very, very privileged to be able to confirm that for you. Why don't you go call your folks?
I'll do that.
Thank you, Tony. The brother of Don Cook, a vice consul of the American Embassy in Tehran, who is at this moment on his way out of Iranian airspace. Maybe they're already gone. President Reagan said they left, what, Sandy, about 12:30, 30 minutes or so?
12:30. He said that the first plane was off at 12:30. You know, it's very, very marvelous that they are, because the fact is, I don't believe we have a Secretary of State this afternoon.
I guess not.
We do not.
Well,
he has signed the documents.
Yes.
Senator Proxmire is asking for a roll call vote on those cabinet officers that have been approved by the respective committees. 2 haven't yet, Samuel Pierce and Raymond Donovan. But now there will be an orderly transition and no leftover problems for General Haig's team at the State Department.
George?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we are, for about the next 24 or 48 hours, going to have great unanimity about this issue, and then you're going to have one of the great arguments of modern American history.
Yes.
There'll be a lot of assignment of blame and investigation, and there probably should be, but so the glow will fade.
Well, yes, the glow will fade, but for the moment, by heaven, I think we're going to just bask in the glow and enjoy it. Tony, I forgot to ask you, do you have brothers and sisters, other brothers and sisters?
Lots of them. 7 of them.
7 of them?
That's right.
Are they all, you're in Ellicott City, Maryland, is that your home?
That's right. Yes, it is.
And are they all there? Are they scattered around?
Well, I'm here.
You're here.
And
you know where
my
your
parents
big
are in
brother is?
Memphis right now. I know where my big brother is.
Yes.
And we're all going to be gathering real soon.
You see your father drinking champagne this morning on television?
No, I missed that.
You better get back and have some before it's gone.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Tony. And congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Really great news.
This...
Let's see what's happening now. Oh, the luncheon. well, we're going to go out to Andrews Air Force Base, to Tom Jarrell, who I believe is talking to former Secretary of State Muskie. Tom, go ahead.
Mr. Former Secretary of State Edmund Muskie is with us here at Andrews Air Force Base. Certainly your department, the State Department, Mr. Muskie, worked many, many long hours, many months on the hostage situation to finally bring it to its conclusion. How do you feel today as the chief representative of that department, whose job we might say is well done?
Well, the joy of the moment sort of offsets the sense of loss one gets when leaving a challenging job like this. So it's been rather perfect, in balance. The gains are more than the losses. To have these people who become an inseparable part of my life, people I've never met, and I feel as close to them as I feel to my own family and friends. And so I'm anxious to see them, to welcome.
You'll have a chance to see them yourself.
Yes, I will. I look forward to that.
You'll be traveling with Mr. Carter to West Germany.
Yes. We'll leave here, I think, tentatively around 8 p.m. tonight. Get there in the wee hours of the morning, but we're used to that.
How did the word finally reach you that it was done? They were safely in the air and leaving.
Well, we were standing in the receiving line here for President Carter out here at Andrews. We've Secretary Brown, of course, has direct contact, and he kept us abreast of the movements over there. So we learned when the first plane took off, and of course one doesn't know which plane held the hostages. And then just before the president arrived, we got word that the second plane was in the air and our people were free.
Do you think the Iranians are cynical enough to have held the hostages to this late moment just in spite for President Carter?
I think that's a possibility, but I think I'd rather let them indulge that sort of thing, and we'll indulge in the joy of the moment of having our people here.
Thank you, Mr. Muskie, for a distinguished job as Secretary of State and a good job on the hostages. Frank?
Thank you, Tom. And I think former Secretary of State Muskie summed it up rather well. He is departing government service after all these years, first as governor of Maine, and, well, I guess he was a state representative, too, wasn't he? A state senator, then governor of Maine, then senator, and finally Secretary of State. And he said that even though he's leaving government service today, ending his public career, the gains outweigh the losses. And by the gains, of course, he means the freedom of the hostages. Now, we are going to continue with our coverage of Inaugural 81 and all the other news today after this message and a word from our local stations.
Why do they like Ginny's cream pie better than mine?
It's not cream pie, it's dream pie.
What's the difference?
Dream pie's really creamy. It's higher and lighter than plain cream pie.
Hard to make?
Easy. Take prepared Dream Whip, add 2 boxes of Jell-O instant pudding and milk, whip it, pour into a pie shell, then chill.
Delicious cream pie.
Not cream pie, dream pie!
From Dream Whip whipped topping mix and Jell-O brand instant pudding.
See this ugly yellow stain? That's what comes from cigar or cigarette smoke. Just think what smoking a pack a day, every day, could do to your teeth. But look, here's Topol, the smoker's tooth polish that helps remove all kinds of superficial tobacco stains. Topol starts to work immediately to clean your teeth and to help remove these stains. Just use Topol week after week and watch your teeth get brighter and brighter. Topol, the smoker's tooth polish, now in 3-ounce regular or 7-ounce fluoride.
Saturday, the Angels head for the hills and start running moonshine when they move to a new night.
A Southern tradition. The premier spring and summer bridal showing this Saturday at 1 in the Hyatt Regency Ballroom. Presented by Modern Bride Magazine and Kastner Knott.
Ma! The biggest date of my life, and you switched to deodorant soap?
New Shield is better. It's got extra strength.
Now's no time to test a new soap.
With Shield, you'll feel cleaner, because Shield fights odor better.
Here's why. While the leading deodorant soap is effective against odor, New Shield is proven significantly more effective. So you feel cleaner.
Shield is better.
The biggest date of her life?
New Shield fights odor better, so you'll feel cleaner.
Meet an old Southern friend that's brand new. Martha White Bix Mix. Buttermilk baking mix in a new 2-pound box. All-purpose Bix Mix turns out perfect biscuits, pancakes, and shortcake every time. That's because the Martha White folks carefully blend 100% soft wheat flour with a special leavening formula to please Southern tastes. New 2-pound Bix Mix. Keep it on hand for quick, delicious baking Southern style. You can trust Martha White for all your baking.
Continues.
We're back at the Capitol. You can see behind me there, the workmen are already beginning to dismantle the president's platform because the ceremony is all over. Right now, President Reagan and 86 other people are inside Statuary Hall in the Capitol here. They're having a private luncheon. Our cameras have been very graciously and politely asked to depart the premises. But we will be able to go back in later on for the toasts at the conclusion of the luncheon, but we're not going to be in there now to see them enjoying their let's see, chicken piquant and, well, I'm sure California wines. But then, anyway, they'll have a nice lunch. And when it's all over, why, they'll have a toast, and we'll go inside for the toast to see that. Now, while Ronald Reagan is beginning to savor the you might call it the elegance of the presidency, it has not always been that way for this man, whom we described at the very outset of this program as a son of Illinois. So we want to go back now to Illinois to tell you from whence he came. And Jim Hickey has this report.
I've been upstairs on the phone trying to get a hold of 2 celebrations, 2 parties that are going on. One in Tampico, Illinois, where I was born, and one in Dixon, Illinois, where I grew up. I've got 2 hometowns. So to all of them, thank you too, back there in the hometown. Thank you all.
This is one of those hometowns, tiny Tampico, Illinois, as it looked in 1911, the year Ronald Reagan was born.
Reagan spent much of his first 9 years here in Tampico, a town that hasn't changed much in 70 years. The story is told that when Reagan was still a chubby infant, his father said he makes an awful lot of noise for a little bit of a fat Dutchman, and the nickname Dutch stuck.
Dutch Reagan soon lost that baby fat and grew into a trim, streamlined youngster given to athletic games. Good friend and school chum Vern Dennison remembers Dutch was always the sheriff when they played Cowboys and Indians. The families were poor then, and Vern says Dutch and the other kids improvised as they played in a park along the railroad tracks.
We didn't have knives or 6-shooters, but we'd go around behind all the old grocery stores and get the rotten bananas and lemons and oranges and then have a battle. So the garbage collection wasn't any problem in those days.
Up the road in nearby Dixon, Illinois, the other hometown, Reagan's personality developed. Here were the beginnings of Reagan the athlete, Reagan the actor, and Reagan the politician. The family moved here in 1920, living, among other places, in this house on Hennepin Street. Townspeople say young Dutch was a popular and active teenager. He was elected Dixon High student body president in 1928. For 7 years, Reagan was a lifeguard in Lowell Park along the Rock River, north of town, where he saved 77 lives. Fred Moore is one of them.
Undertow took me under the raft. Last I can remember is just laying on the bottom, just floating away. Well, next thing I remember is on the shore here was coming to. Reagan was right there with me. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today myself.
Athlete Reagan also played tackle on the Dixon High football team. The 28 yearbook says Dutch was one of the strong factors that year and certainly had the true Dixon spirit. Teammate Barney Koss remembers that spirit.
He was always out patting the fellows on the back. Let's go. Let's knock them down. Let's win this game. Let's not horse around. And that's the kind of a fellow Reagan was.
These were also the years Reagan began to develop the talent that would make him world famous, acting. He was the star of several high school plays. 84-year-old B.J. Fraser was his advisor and drama coach.
If you presented him, gave him a character in a play, he wanted to know about that character. Who is he? What does he do? Why does he think this way?
Now, more than half a century later, B.J. has his most important advice for his most famous student as he becomes President of the United States.
In any decision that you make or any judgment that you're cooking up, think first of the people.
Jim Hickey, ABC News, Dixon, Illinois.
Well, that's very good advice for a future president to have, or any of us, I guess. But it's particularly poignant that it comes today from Ronald Reagan's first drama instructor. From that relatively modest beginning in Tampico and Dixon, Illinois, he, of course, went on to become a radio sportscaster, recreating, I'm told, with a good deal of imagination, wire service accounts of baseball games at which he was not present, where he would simply take the ticker and go on to describe the hits and the runs and so forth, and raise his voice, and when a hit was actually made, and get hysterical when the home run was hit in the last of the ninth with 2 outs and so forth. Never, of course, seeing any of this at all, but just recreating it. So that took a certain amount of acting ability. And he went on to Hollywood and, of course, became very famous there as an actor. And also in Hollywood, he achieved a certain measure of affluence. An even more elegant life, however, awaits him now, although his salary will be not quite so great as it once was. But Ron Miller has this report on all the joys there are of being a president.
When George Washington borrowed money to get to his own inauguration, he had no idea how the rewards of the presidency would change. Because when this music was popular, the notion was that the presidency would defy the aura of royalty, the trappings of nobility. But then change is part of the republic. Presidents now do at times appear regal. Certainly when they receive a visitor, the welcome is in what you'd call down home. Pomp and ceremony tempt every president. They're part of the president's perks. The little extras that go with the office. It pays $200,000 a year and has a $50,000 expense account. There are 132 rooms at the White House for a first family to wander through, 18 acres to romp on. It costs about $2 million a year to maintain the president's rent-free but definitely first-class home. There are chefs to prepare the cuisine. You can't simply call it food. Fragrance and elegance are provided by staff florists. In fact, there are 75 people who just keep things together for the first family, taking care of the pool, the bowling alley, the theater, the tennis courts, the library. But should the president find the White House confining, he can slip away to the country, Camp David. 150 acres of tranquility, assured by the fact that even reporters aren't permitted to spoil the atmosphere. Helicopters normally take the president to and from Camp David. Everybody knows about Washington traffic. The president has all kinds of transportation he never has to wait for. Some for long hauls, some for short, but always under the protection of the Secret Service. Presidents also don't have to wait for theater tickets if they go out for the evening. They don't even have to wait for snow for a winter lawn party. If the real stuff isn't available, they simply have it made. A president can ask for anything. A treehouse for a child, or an evening of entertainment. Today, it all comes with the title, Mr. President. This is Ron Miller.
Thank you, Ron. And there are certain comforts and privileges and perquisites that also accompany the title of First Lady. And Barbara Walters will be talking about all that in just a moment. Our coverage of Inauguration 81 continues in a moment.
It's everywhere, deep underground, under the ocean, in tight rock formations, in coal, in waste, even in plants. It's methane. You know it as natural gas. Clean, remarkably efficient gas energy can come from many sources, which is why gas can continue to be America's #1 domestic energy source in the future. But it still makes sense to use all energies wisely today.
Now you see it, now you don't. Here you have it, here you won't. Oh, Diet Pepsi, 1 small calorie. Now you see it, now you don't. That great Pepsi taste. Diet Pepsi won't go to your waste. So now you see it, now you know. Oh, Diet Pepsi, 1 small calorie. Now you see it, now you don't.
Wednesday, the taxi guys take a mountain vacation.
Something ate all our food. We're gonna die.
And end up in a mountain of trouble. hand on soap. What did Maggie do to straighten out Jody?
Watch out!
And is Danny by the farm? There, a mystery in Vegas.
No murder weapon?
B, witnesses a killing.
No victim?
But when Dan checks it out,
no bloodstains.
There's not a trace of foul play.
Tomorrow, starting at 9, 8 Central and Mountain on ABC.
Down the road a piece from the Capitol, down Pennsylvania Avenue is where I am, Barbara Walters, in front of the White House and in front of the reviewing stand, where in a short time we're going to have a very gala but short and snappy parade, we hear. And a moment ago we heard about the perks that a president has. I would like to just add that an ex-president also continues to have some benefits. Jimmy Carter will get $69,630 as an annual pension. It's the same as a cabinet member gets. He'll receive $150,000 for the first 30 months after his office to pay for his staff, and $96,000 a year thereafter. He will have Secret Service to protect him around the clock for the rest of his life. And Amy Carter will have Secret Service protection until she is 16. She's going to be going to private school in Americus, Georgia. And one more thing, the ex-president will be entitled to send mail without postage. Jimmy Carter, of course, saying that he's going to settle down in Plains and write. And Walter Mondale saying that he's going to continue in public life, not too sure yet what he's going to be doing. Well, that's the presidents and ex-presidents. What about first ladies? We've had different kinds of first ladies who wanted to be very active, as Rosalind Carter was. First ladies, perhaps like Nancy Reagan, who said that her greatest joy has been being a wife and mother, although now she's talking more about, her press secretary told us today that she can't wait to get into the White House, and where there is more substance to her life, that she's going to be active in the foster grandparents program, and she'd like to do something to alleviate drugs and alcohol from the life of teenagers. Well, who is this woman, Nancy Reagan? What is her background? It really is quite interesting and quite unusual. Here it is. Nancy Davis Reagan was born Anne Frances Robbins in 1923, but everyone called her Nancy. Her mother, a former actress, married Dr. Loyal Davis when Nancy was 6. He adopted her, and she took his name. As Nancy Davis, she had a brief career in the movies, which she happily gave up to marry actor Ronald Reagan. Nancy's last film, Hellcats of the Navy, was the only one in which she co-starred with her husband. She played his fiancé in the 1956 story about a submarine operation in World War II.
You knew I was fresh out of a bad marriage when we met. I wanted to be sure this time, so we played it safe. Until I knew that you were Mr. Right.
The Reagans have 2 children, Patty, 28, and Ron, 22. Reagan also has 2 children from his former marriage to actress Jane Wyman, Maureen, 40, and Michael, 34. Nancy has devoted her life to being the wife of Ronald Reagan. She's usually in agreement with her husband on every issue. Her intimates say she's finally reached her ultimate goal.
For President-elect Reagan and his lovely wife, Nancy.
A very gracious and charming new First Lady, as indeed is also the wife of the Vice President, Barbara Bush. All 4 of the Reagan children are here, and the 5 Bush children are here celebrating with their parents. There's been a good deal going on in Washington this weekend, and there is perhaps no keener observer of the Washington scene than the Washington Post columnist Sally Quinn. Sally's been looking around and is prepared to give us some of her views as she sees it.
Well, Barbara, I think one of the most ironic things about the Reagans coming to Washington is that after Watergate, with all of the movies and the books that were written and seen about Washington, and people started writing novels and it became very glamorous, they began to call it Hollywood on the Potomac. And movie stars came to Washington to see political celebrities, people who had just started becoming celebrities after Watergate and after Washington suddenly became popular. And it seems to me now that the myth of Hollywood on the Potomac has indeed become a reality, with Ronald Reagan, a former actor, and Nancy Reagan, an actress, moving into the White House. When I was watching the ceremony today, I thought this could be a Ronald Reagan movie. And Washington, and indeed, has become Hollywood.
Sally, when you say that it has become Hollywood, is that necessarily bad, you know, to have the the glamour and the elegance and the opulence and some of the excitement. In part, there's been a feeling that maybe Jimmy Carter lost because it was too austere, too grim a scene.
I think you're absolutely right. I don't say that meaning it's bad or good. I'm not being judgmental about it. I just noticed that it's different. I think that the styles between the Carters and the Reagans are extraordinary. I remember 4 years ago, I covered the Carter inaugural. I was a pool reporter, and on inauguration night, I went around with the Carters, and instead of using a limousine, they rode around in a mustard-colored Chevrolet, and people were really disappointed. There'd be all these sirens and escort cars, and suddenly this little mustard-colored Chevrolet would go by, and people would say, "Oh no, why doesn't he ride in a limousine?" And he'd go to the inaugural balls, and they'd play Georgia on My Mind instead of Hail to the Chief, and Rosalind wore her inaugural ball gown from when he was inaugurated as governor of Georgia for sentimental reasons instead of a beautiful new dress. And I think people were really disappointed. Now, if they have in fact asked for something else, they have really gotten a change.
Sally, Sandra Van Oker.
Hi.
How are you? Listen, I was listening to what you were saying before, just now about this, but isn't it true that what we who stay in Washington, and God help the country, become arbiters of what's taste and what isn't it really with this crowd, just as the crowd before and every crowd that comes, that we're just kind of salivating because it's fresh meat, new stuff to write about?
Well, there is no question about that. I think that certainly the press is probably the least disappointed group of people that there is a new administration here, because it's a whole new group to write about. Even though most of the press, most reporters have admitted that they voted for Jimmy Carter, I think that there's a state of exhilaration among people in Washington because there's a whole new group. There are new members of the administration, new people to learn about, new things to write. And I think that at some point, once the honeymoon is over, things will start to get less pleasant than they are now, and people will start picking out certain people who are going to be the good guys and certain people who are going to be the bad guys. And I think that the Reagans' sense of opulence and grandeur and their whole style that they've adopted, and which seems to be what the country wants now, otherwise they wouldn't have voted for them, I think that's going to tend to come into criticism a little bit.
Will the Californians enjoy it here? It's a rather beige city compared to where they come from.
Say that again?
Will the Californians enjoy it here? This is, after all, a city. Color it beige.
I think that they're going to love it, and I think they're going to do very well here. One of the biggest problems with the Carter people was that they came in and they had run against Washington. They were Georgians, and they were anti-Washington. They bragged about it, and they sort of closed the wagons around them. They sort of encircled themselves, and they never went out, and they never got out around the town, and they kept saying, "We're not here to enjoy ourselves, we're here to run the government." And what it seems to me they never quite got was that the government is the representative of the people. I mean, the Congress, the Senate, the lobbyists, the lawyers, all of those people, even the press, come from all over the country. Those are Washington, and they represent the rest of the country. I think that the Reagan people have come in with a totally different attitude, possibly because so many of the people in the new Reagan administration are sort of holdovers from past administrations, from the Nixon people and the Ford people. So they've been around and they know Washington, they know how things operate, and they understand how important it is to get along with Washington, to make it with the Washingtonians. Because if you come in and you say, "I'm not going to use Washington," it's like a general walking in and saying, "I'm the general, I'm not going to use the soldiers." You've got to have the city and the apparatus and the establishment working with you.
Thank you, Sally, very much. Sally Quinn of the Washington Post. And of course, what we're talking about is really two philosophies. When Jimmy Carter came here, it seemed to be a time for some austerity, and we seem to have had enough of the hoopla and the opulence. And now it's almost a different economic mood. I mean, we want things to be better. We want to feel that people can do better financially, and it shows in all of the different symbols of the Reagan people. Sally talked about the California people. They're having a great time. We hope to have shortly with us one of the closest friends of Ronald Reagan, and you may remember her as movie actress Benita Granville. She's now Mrs. Jack Rather, and her husband is a member of the kitchen cabinet, and they've just been having a marvelous time the last few days. Well, of course, this is one part of the story, but the other part of the story, and the one which has us all, no matter what we do, so excited and a little tearful, is the hostage story. Oh, I am asked to remind you that tonight, while I'm still talking about the gala part of it, we're going to be covering the balls from 11:30 to 12:30 tonight. There are 8 of them, and a youth ball, which makes 9, and Sally's going to be helping us cover those balls tonight, and I will be there as well. Now, as we said, to the other story, the hostage story, and Ted Koppel will bring us up to date on that. Ted.
Thank you, Barbara, and incidentally, I suspect we'll have a few things to say about the hostages at 11:30 tonight also. It is now possible, in fact, it is probable that the hostages are out of Iranian airspace. They left, as we now know, about an hour and 15 minutes ago. It was to have taken them somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour to get out, so theoretically they are on their way to Algeria. Whether they will be stopping first in Athens, I'm not quite clear. But to bring us up to date on all those details, let's go now once again to our desk in Frankfurt and ABC's Peter Jennings. Peter?
Well, Ted, you've already discovered today how bad I am at mathematics, but let me tell you that at the moment, using Eastern Standard Time, the time that you were on, Algeria is presently gearing up for an arrival of the hostages there at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and a very possible arrival, according to military sources here in Frankfurt, of 04:30 a.m. Frankfurt time, which would, I know, Ted, be 10:30 p.m. your time, just as those inaugural balls in Washington are getting underway. We're still unclear about the flight plan itself from Tehran, though Iran Tower told us just a few moments ago that it was Ankara, Algiers, the same route that the Algerian 727s took as they went into Tehran to pick up the hostages. We now know, too, that the last sound, all 52 Americans, we're told, all 52 got on board. The last sound they heard as they left Tehran airport was Allahu Akbar, God is great, down with America, and down with Reagan, shouted by Revolutionary Guards surrounding their aircraft, according to a colleague of ours I just talked to in Tehran a few minutes ago. Here in Frankfurt, the Sinai Nightingale Medivac aircraft still have a flight plan filed for Algiers. They have not left the ground. The caps are off their engines, the lights are on in their aircraft on the other side of this enormous international airport, and so we are very much on standby. And we do know, as you know, that they are heading for Algiers. We do not know exactly which route they will take. But tonight, during those inaugural balls, Americans may see the 52 in freedom. Ted?
Thank you very much, Peter. Of course, now the focus is, to a very large degree, on the families of the hostages and their hours of rejoicing now. You would be forgiven, I suppose, if you thought that by now we all have the names of these hostages memorized. I don't. Let me read you now a little bit about the man to whose family we're going to go next. Cook Donald T., 25 years old, from Memphis, Tennessee, single. His parents are Ernest and Susan. He has 7 brothers and sisters. He was the vice consul at the embassy. That meant he was responsible for issuing visas. Now he's responsible for only one thing, and that is getting home to his family. Our own Rebecca Chase is with the family right now with his mother, Susan Cook. Becky?
Ted, we are here in the home of the Cooks, and if you can believe it, Professor Cook has gone to school today to teach his regular classes. But we have just seen the Cook's son, Tony, in Washington with Frank Reynolds, so indeed it is a bit of a family reunion. Just minutes ago, the phone rang and Mrs. Cook answered it, and I heard her say, "I believe it now, it's official." Mrs. Cook, tell us about that phone call.
Well, everybody's been asking me for several days now if I believe it, and I told them I would believe it when I heard it from the State Department, and just as soon as I did hear it from the State Department, so I'm convinced now that it's for real, and it's wonderful. I just, I can't explain, I can't describe how I feel.
For days you've been saying that you feel like you've been holding your breath. Are you breathing easier now?
Well, I'm still excited, and I'm not sure I'm breathing easier, but it's a different kind of thing, and it's very happy excitement.
Yesterday, your husband kiddingly told us that when he saw his son, he expected his first words to be, "Donald who?" What do you think the first words of your son will be to you?
I couldn't imagine. I think he's just going to be so happy to see everybody, and it's going to be a while before anybody gets a word in edgewise. There's going to be so much excitement when we get together, and a lot of hugging and kissing, I'm sure. And
you must understand that this is a family with 8 children.
Right.
So it is going to be indeed a big family reunion.
It's an extended family.
You know, Mrs. Cook, this is Ted Koppel in Washington. You're being a little modest. You remember you were on with us last Friday night, and at that point I asked you what your mother's instinct told you. You remember what you told me then?
I told you that this was it, yeah.
And you were right.
right. I'm glad I was right.
I am too. Now tell me, what is the State Department telling you in terms of what you ought to do, and are you following their advice? Are you going to stay home, or are you going to go over to Germany? What's the schedule, the chronology for you now?
Well, on the phone call, they said that they would call later in the afternoon and give us the itinerary of the planes and everything, and I imagine they'll take it one step at a time and tell us just exactly what to expect. Our plans are not to go to Wiesbaden. We never did plan on going to Wiesbaden. We will meet Donald in Washington with the rest of the families.
All right, that is the plan then, for all of you to come to Washington and gather here, and what are you going to do here?
Well, I don't know about some of the other families. Some of them may decide to go to Wiesbaden, but personally, my husband and I will meet Donald in Washington, and we've been told we will be taken to an undisclosed location, and we'll have a one evening reunion with Donald before the media get to us, and then it'll be about 3 days of media attention and meetings with government officials and ceremonies and who knows what all, and then after that we'll be able to get away for our own private family reunion.
God save us all from the media. How long is it going to be before he comes back here? Do you know how long they're going to hold the former hostages in Frankfurt?
Oh, I like that word, former.
I do too.
Well, we've been told it'll be 5 to 7 days. Nothing definite as yet, but as I said, the State Department is going to call us later today again, and they will inform us what's going on.
After 444 days, those 5 to 7 days will be like falling off a log, won't they?
Right.
Okay, Mrs. Cook, thank you very much for letting us share in your joy a little bit, and what can we say? Good luck. I'm delighted for you, as I know we all are.
Thank you.
We're going to go now to our diplomatic correspondent, Barry Dunsmore, who's over at the State Department. Barry?
Ted, we've had somewhat different kind of reaction here at the State Department to the release of the hostages from two people who've been very visible over the past year. Mrs. Louisa Kennedy, who has been the spokesman for the Family Liaison Action Group, and Mrs. Catherine Keogh, who was the president of that group. Both had husbands who were hostages for the past 14 months. Mrs. Kennedy looked me in the eye a short time ago and she said, "I am numb. I simply do not believe it. It's not because I'm holding back, I simply am incapable of accepting it." And then she said that she found it revolting that the Iranians had pulled our chain, as it were, for the last moment and not allowed word to come from the plane that everyone was safe and sound. That word, of course, has since come. Mrs. Keogh, on the other hand, was very eloquent on the need to decompress, her need to decompress, as well as the need of her husband. Ted?
All right, Barry, thank you very much indeed. It is our understanding that Algerian officials took quite literally a head count as the hostages came aboard the plane in Tehran, that the results of that head count are being telegraphed or radioed ahead to Algiers. So if there is any doubt whatsoever about the number, there isn't at the moment. There doesn't appear to be any doubt, but they have quite literally, they're counting toes and fingers at this point. And at the moment, everything looks wonderful. It appears that they are out of Iranian airspace right now and headed either directly or indirectly toward Algiers. Let's go back now to the inaugural events and to my colleague Barbara Walters, who is in Lafayette Park overlooking the White House and Pennsylvania Avenue. Barbara?
Thank you very much, Ted. And you know, when you talk about the media, we're all supposed to be so cool and calm, and yet as we see the families of the hostages, and you expressed it so well, I think we all feel emotionally involved ourselves. Some of them have become friends of ours because we have talked to them so much, and even though we're talking to them again today, it's with the greatest of pleasure. We'll be back with the inauguration ceremonies. Our coverage of the Inauguration 81 continues in a moment.
Harold.
Some fire logs start slow, and others burn out fast.
It's out, Harold.
But Duraflame starts fast.
It's already burning, Harold.
And burns for a long time.
It's still burning, Harold.
Duraflame, with its Easy Light strip, starts faster, burns longer than any other fire log.
It's still burning, Harold. Harold?
Duraflame, the fastest way to the longest fire.
See this ugly yellow stain? That's what comes from cigar or cigarette smoke. Just think what smoking a pack a day, every day, could do to your teeth. But look, here's Topol, the smoker's tooth polish that helps remove all kinds of superficial tobacco stains. Topol starts to work immediately to clean your teeth and to help remove these stains. Just use Topol week after week and watch your teeth get brighter and brighter. Topol, the smoker's tooth polish, now in 3-ounce regular or 7-ounce fluoride.
The hostages on their way home. Stay with ABC News for complete coverage.
Oh, excuse me, ma'am, but you're not getting your money's worth buying the leading liquid in-tank cleaner.
Really?
Dependo Automatic Toilet Bowl Cleaner does the same job for less. Dependo clobbers odors. It also helps fight stains with every flush, even under the rim. And Dependo saves you up to 20 cents over the leading brand, so it's a better value.
With today's prices, I'm getting Dependo.
Dependo Automatic Toilet Bowl Cleaner does the job for up to 20 cents less, also in Pine Fresh Green.
Ever think you could buy a late model large screen color portable TV for only $168? You can now at Holiday Inn North, Trinity Lane and I-65. Holiday Inns at other institutions are replacing their color TVs, and Mid-South has brought them to Nashville for sale. All have been under service contract and are in excellent condition. You heard right. Late model large screen portables for only $168, or 19-inch black and whites for $39.95. Terms are cash and carry, Visa or MasterCharge. 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily at Holiday Inn North, Trinity Lane and I-65 in Nashville.
It's taken 444 days, but the American hostages are now on the way home, and a happy Memphis family celebrates. The story tonight at 6 on Newswatch.
You're watching WNGE.
ABC News live coverage of Inauguration 81 continues. This portion brought to you by the General Foods family of fine products, pleasing you and your family for over 50 years. Products like Maxwell House, Post Cereals, and Kool-Aid Mix.
There are about 500,000 people in this country